So this is a video I've wanted to do for a long time. I want to talk about what game I think is the worst video game. And I'm going to put this in my quickie game review. So here we go. So, there's tons and tons of bad games out there. And new, old, but I want to talk about the game that I think is the worst. Now I know what people are going to say. They're going to say that this little cartridge here is the worst game ever made. But in that theory, I'm going to defend this game and explain why I don't think E.T. for the Atari 2600 is the worst game ever made. So let's start by saying, people like to think that this cartridge here was the downfall of the gaming industry the first time. We haven't made it to the second one yet. But I want to go on record in saying that's not true. Atari was bad with money in general. They would do big competitions, that eats up a lot of money. They would make poorly ported games like Pac-Man for the Atari, and instead of cannibalizing cartridges, like ripping them apart and reusing parts, well, they buried a bunch of cartridges in the desert, so that eats up a lot of money instead of reusing stuff like we most likely would today. And so how can that make this little game be the worst game ever? Let's look at the facts of the E.T. game. E.T. was made in 5 weeks. I don't even think good cell phone games are made in 5 weeks. On top of that, it was made by one man, a legendary man too, Howard Scott Warshaw. Sure, we all like to push the envelope and everything, but this man decided to make a whole game by himself in 5 weeks. That's pretty ballsy, and you gotta salute him for that. And honestly, I don't think anybody nowadays would do that. But that just feeds more attention to why this game isn't the worst game ever made. Now, people like to say that the gameplay was really shitty. The gameplay isn't that bad. Yeah, it's a little rough, but here's something people don't understand. For the E.T. game, what you had to do was actually read the instruction manuals to figure out the game instead of just popping it in, playing it like Space Invaders or Yar's Revenge, or let's just say Mario. I know we're talking about different consoles now, but my worst game is on a different console. So it wasn't one of those just pick up and play games. And as kids, we all know that when you buy a video game, you just want to throw it in and play. So it's kind of a downfall on the game, but it's also a downfall on humanity if you think about it. So enough talking about E.T. I think I defended it well enough that I have some good points. So let's talk about the game I think is the worst game. Unfortunately, I don't own a copy of this game, but I've played it many a times. Superman 64. Unlike the E.T. game that was made in 5 weeks by one person, the Superman 64 game was made by a team of people. So the game was unveiled at E3 97 and 1998. The game was not released until May of 1999 in North America and July in Europe of 99. So that's a lot of time to make a good game. The fact that E.T. gets a lot of grief, that's a good reason not to give it grief. Superman 64 was also supposed to be based around the Superman cartoon. That is very unfortunate because this game has shit to do with the actual cartoon. And you can say whatever you want, but there were Super Nintendo games a generation before the 64 that were based off cartoons and did it great. Let's take a look. We had Rocko's Modern Life. We had Batman and Robin. We had Tasmania. Do you want me to keep going? There was a good Ren and Stimpy game on there as well. There were some good Simpsons games on the Nintendo Entertainment Center. So, that being said, there's no excuse why this one couldn't be as good as the cartoon. Oh, you want me to pick some 64 games? Well, how about ones that aren't cartoons? How about any of the Rare games? Rareware was making great games then. Why couldn't other people do that? Especially with some Warner Brothers money backed up behind it. One of my big ones too is, unlike the E.T. game, where you were supposed to read the manual to figure everything out, Superman 64 is a pick up and play game, and it's a repetitive one. Fly through rings, pick up cars, time limit, time limit, time limit, button mash, button mash, button mash. So altogether, the game really, to me, is one of the worst. With some legendary games on the 64, there is no excuse for this game not to be good. Yeah, there's some shitty ones on there too. Come on, people, there were a lot more facts into the video game crash than E.T. Atari should have just been smarter, not rushed out crappy ports. But those days are gone. I just wanted to kind of stick up for the E.T. cartridge. Sure, it's not the best game you'll ever play in the world, but it's still a piece of gaming history that shouldn't be shit on every time somebody says a bad game. There's also worse games. Let's not forget Ride to Hell. Now that game might just be worse than Superman 64 and E.T. combined. Anyways, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If not, well, give it a thumbs down. You don't have to like everything on the internet. Subscribe to Pale Productions for other videos. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter. In the comments below, tell me your worst video game ever. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me. There's tons out there. Tell me the one that you think is the worst. And until next time, happy gaming, my friends. Thanks for watching.